Good morning, church. It is an honor to be up here in front of you this week as Pastor Tim is away with his family on vacation for the next couple weeks. You'll get a healthy dosing of me here this week and a few weeks, and next week we'll have Pastor Ben from our church plant in Victoria joining us as well. It's been fun being able to study and learn a little bit more about the Ten Commandments. I've actually had some things revealed to me in my studies, so I pray that as we continue studying through our 10-week series here, 10 weeks, 10 Commandments just kind of fit right in there perfectly. It'd be a great sermon series for the summer. So I pray that as we continue to study through this, that God would reveal His truth in a way that we can look at the Ten Commandments not as a lot of church history is looked at as a set of rules, but as a way that God guides our lives, that we can best serve and love others as long as we are also serving and loving Him as well. And if you read through the Ten Commandments, that's kind of how they're split up. You got the first couple that are about loving God and showing honor to Him, and then you got the last ones that are about serving others and honoring God through service on others as well. And Jesus wraps it up really well in the New Testament when He tells us the golden rule, which is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love others as yourself. So when we study the Ten Commandments, there's actually different lists that different denominations of Christian backgrounds split up these Ten Commandments. And there's some denominations out there that actually take the first and second commandment and put it together as one. So those two, if you put them together, they are having no gods before me and not making a carved idol of God. Now, in our Christian tradition, we separate that as number 1 and number 2, and then further on down into like 7, 8, and 9, we split those up as well, especially when it comes to coveting in 9 and 10. But I can see why there would be this distinction to try to put the first and second commandment together. If you look at the original Hebrew that is written here, the word for idol in the Hebrew is pesel. And it can translate there's actually, when you go on, like, let's say something like Blue Letter Bible, there's only 2 words that it translates as in English: idol or image. So I want to take the time this morning to go through what that means. What does it mean to have no idols? And what does it mean to have no images of God? And I think a lot of people can understand and can shape their mind around what it means to have an idol. But even in my own research with this, it was really interesting to see what God had to say about having an image of God. So we're going to break this down. And if you know me at all, you know that I love context. I say that every time I preach. If you're part of my youth group, you're probably getting sick and tired of hearing that word because I say it all the time. But if we don't have context, we don't know what the scriptures are actually trying to teach. So let's give you a little bit of context on the Hebrews or the Israelites. And at this point in their history, when we're getting the Ten Commandments, they had just left Egypt. But hold on, there's like hundreds of years of story before that. So first, you go back into Genesis, and while you're in Genesis, you have the last story of Genesis, which is Joseph. Joseph finds himself in Egypt. He finds himself as the second in command in Egypt. If you read his story, his brothers and entire family end up coming and being a part of Egypt. They get to settle in the land of Goshen. Goshen was a very rich territory. It was a delta of the Nile River, so very good farmland, great for raising cattle. So the people of Israel came to this area and they thrived there. And while they were there for 400 years, and they were one of the most prosperous people groups in Egypt. Now, if you read at the very beginning of the book of Exodus, it talks about how the pharaohs had forgotten Joseph. They had forgotten what he had done for Egypt. They had forgotten the way that he'd saved them in the midst of a famine. And at this point, you have the Israelites. They are prosperous, they are rich, and the Egyptians are a little bit jealous of this. Hey, this is another nation living within our borders, living off our wealth, living off of our generosity, growing and multiplying more so than we are. We need to do something about this. So if you follow through in the story, eventually one of the pharaohs goes, that's it, we're going to have to cut them off at the knees. Any male younger than 2, we're going to kill them off. That way we can control the population of the Israelites. Moses, who is given the 10 Commandments by God, is part of this purging. By the grace of God, he is made it through, spends 40 years in Egypt, 40 years in the desert, and then 40 years wandering in the wilderness afterwards as he listens to God, has 10 plagues come upon the Egyptians from God, and then eventually leads the Israelite people out into the wilderness. But through living in Israel, or in Egypt, the Israelites would have come across your everyday culture of being in Egypt. Take somebody from South Africa right now and plant them in the midst of Canada, and they're going to be living in a very different culture than what they're used to. So you have these Israelites whose only recollection of Yahweh, their God, is stories told by their forefathers, oral traditions passed down from one generation to the next. But in Egypt, if you know anything about Egyptian culture, their gods were all stone images carved everywhere. No matter where you went, you would be in a small community, you would be in one of their temples, you would be in the marketplace, you'd be in some of their large cities. Everywhere you went, you would see a carved image of one of their gods. Temples to Egyptian gods would have been everywhere, and massive statues in these cities. So the Israelites would have learned that the best way to show honor to God is show it off to the entire world. If we could build this big, crazy, expensive, awesome thing, well, then everyone will look at it. And 2,000 years later, we still do the same thing. Let's make an 80,000 person stadium so everyone knows that when we host the Olympics, we're the place to be. Let's make gigantic skyscraping towers so everyone knows this is where the rich people come to spend their money. Funny how, thousands and thousands of years later, we still do the same thing as people. Here's the catch with all of this, though. The Egyptians had designed each of their gods to be something for what they were worshiping. Every Egyptian god that you see that has like the head of a cat or the body of an owl or whatever weird combination they used, they were all meant to worship a specific part of life. So here's the conundrum for the Israelites. They want to make an idol. They want to make a carved image of their God. So how do you make a carved image of the God of everything? Well, if we go to Exodus 32, we'll see the Israelites' best intention on trying to make their own carved image of God. When the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people gathered themselves together to Aaron and said to him, "Up, make us gods who shall go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what's become of him." So Aaron said to them, "Take off the rings of gold that are in your ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters, and bring them to me." So all the people took off the rings of gold that were in their ears and brought them to Aaron. Then he received the gold from their hand and fashioned it with a graving tool and made a golden calf. And they said, "There are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt." When Aaron saw this, he built an altar before it. And Aaron made a proclamation saying, "Tomorrow shall be a feast to the Lord." And they rose up early the next day and offered burnt offerings and brought peace offerings. And the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. So they make a cow. Gonna be honest with you, if I was trying to come up with something that was the God of everything and the creator of everything, who literally just led me out of slavery after 400 years, I'm not making a cow. I'm making some crazy super buff lion holding a sword or something, but not a cow. The Israelites had learned in their 400 years of living in Egypt that in order to give honor to God, you have to build the grandest statue out of the best material that you can find. So when others come and see it, they will know that is how powerful that God is. But what if I told you that God has already made an image of himself? There is no carved idol that stands up to this image. There is nothing that we as humanity can make that will honor this image that God has made. Rob Laylaw, in his book Strategic Discipleship, puts it like this: God is looking for someone who can rule the earth on his behalf and to care for this creation in a manner reflective in his holy and creative character. As a people who are made in the image of God, we are God's visible representation on earth. Instead of simply creating a stone monument, God created a living, walking, talking image to represent himself. Every time we look at another person, we have to be reminded that God exists and rules over all creation. God has already made himself his own image in you, in me, in all of us. Take a minute and look at a person next to you. We're in person again. You can look at someone around you. That is the image of God. But we all look different. Okay, God doesn't, he's not a big guy up there with a big white beard. I don't look like that. Most of you don't look like that. We are made in his image. Look at how humanity is different from the rest of creation. We have his life breathed into us. God says in Genesis 1:26-28, "Let us make man in our own image, after our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them. God blessed them and said, "Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the heaven, and over every little living thing that moves on the earth." We do not need to set up false images because we are his image. So next time you walk past someone in need, next time you come across somebody in your life that you hear that little still small voice in your head that says, "Stop, listen." Know that you are interacting in that moment with the Most High. And this is actually something that we are, as Christians, commanded to do, to go and to love and to care for those around us. Matthew 25, verses 31-40 says, this is Jesus talking, "When the Son of Man comes into his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne, and before him will be gathered all the nations, and he will separate people one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will place the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. And then the king will say to those on his right, 'Come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundations of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me.' Then the righteous will answer him, 'Lord, when did we see you hungry or feed you, or thirsty or give you a drink? When did we see you a stranger or welcome you, or naked and clothe you? And when did we see you sick in prison and visit you?' And the king will answer to them, 'Truly I say to you, as you did it to one of the least of my brothers, you did it to me.'" When you interact with anyone, you interact with the living God. Therefore, do not look to the mighty apple. Do not be enswained by the entertaining Disney. Do not find yourself hungry for the food giant McDonald's. Because as much of these things are a part of our culture, we can look around and see people who worship the apple or the Mickey ears or the golden arches. These are images of gods that will never satisfy you, but seeing God in another person and glorifying his creation, that will satisfy and will lead to where worship belongs, with God. So that's one definition of the Hebrew word of pesel, of carved images. But what about the other definition? What about the one that we find ourselves so easily entrapped by? Idols. Now, when we think of idols, maybe the brands I just listed are what come to mind. right? Maybe when you think of an idol, you think of some famous person or some famous team. I can tell you this. Everybody who was in downtown Montreal this week with their jerseys on, hoping with an emotional high that the Canadians would bring the Stanley Cup back to Canada, that's an idol. It's okay to like something and it's okay to cheer for someone. But when you're literally destroying your city because you think your hockey team is going to bring back a cup, that's an idol. Let me give you a better example of what idolatry looks like in the life of maybe our everyday, and why it's so dangerous and can easily take you over without even knowing that it has. Picture a day in your life where you struggle with idolatry. You wake up in the morning, and the first thing you think about is your idol. You twist and you turn in bed because your alarm hasn't gone off yet, but you know that you've woken up early because of your stress about your idol that kept you up late last night having a restless sleep. This idol might be a person, a political movement, a relationship, a problem in our lives, anxiety, you name it. Eventually, you get yourself out of bed and start your normal daily routine, but you know if you just check your phone, you'll get an update on your idol and how it could have possibly changed while you were having your restless sleep. You finished breakfast, but it was hard to eat because you were so stressed about how you would interact with your idol for that day. Would it be a positive day? Or would something awful that is completely out of your control happen? You look at the time on your phone and realize that you're late for your first thing for the day. But as you glance at your phone and see the time, you also see an update about your idol. So you quickly look at as much as you can before you have to go. You hop into your car and you start driving, but it's eating away at you that you didn't spend the amount of time that you wanted to. So you're stopping, and at every red light, you pull out your phone and check to see if you can find more. You go to your first appointment, maybe it's work, maybe it's a meeting, and in your morning pleasantries to the others around you, you hope that no one wants to go deeper because you don't want people to notice you fixating on your idol. You get through your first appointment for the day, but you weren't really paying attention to what was going on because nothing was captivating enough to drag you away from your now out-of-control mindset. Before you know it, it's lunchtime. You take some time to sit down and eat, but instead of gauging with those around you, you pull out the best way for you to connect with your idol. Maybe that's turning on the TV in the lunchroom. Maybe that's pulling out your phone. You finish eating your lunch and prepare yourself for the afternoon, but there's always the sinking thought in the back of your mind that you didn't give your idol enough of your free time. It consumes your thought process again throughout your afternoon. Maybe you're going through your afternoon and something big happens with your idol, some huge update. And before, with those people that you were just going to throw away your pleasantries with, now there's big news. You want to update everyone around you on what you're thinking about, but you don't want them to know you're obsessing. So you start talking to somebody else, and someone disagrees with what you think about your idol. You get defensive and rash and emotional. You start thinking of ways to prove to this person, no, you're just wrong. You're just incorrect, and your thinking is wrong. It starts to weigh on your relationship with the person, and you start to dislike them because of their stance. Your day ends out, and you start working your way home. You get home, and instead of interacting with anyone at home, you immediately go and start looking deeper into the new news about your idol, because now you're in the comfort of your home. You believe that you have the free time and space to research this new news and find out points that will help that other person see the error of their ways. It consumes you. You eat supper late. Maybe afterwards you try to force your mind off of it because you don't want to have another restless sleep. You sit down and veg in front of the TV because you no longer have the emotional energy to engage with anyone else today. After vegging for a while, you realize it's a fruitless effort, and you try to get your mind focused on something else, so you know that you can go to bed and have a restful night, but you know that that's not going to happen because your mindset is so lost. Sounds exhausting, to be perfectly honest with you. But here's the point of this story. I bet for almost every single person watching this sermon right now, something in there clicked in your brain. And if it didn't, you're probably blind to your own idolatry. The reason why I can say this is because I have had days that are that. Literally every single part of that. That is my day, and it is exhausting. And I go home, and I don't want to see or talk to anyone because I'm so fixated on something that is meaningless. We all have something that we put on a pedestal above God, and it rules and controls us. It shapes how we act, think, and do life together. Biblical example for you. Paul is talking to the church in Galatia. And Galatia is a region in now modern-day Turkey, and it includes the cities of Iconium, Lystra, and Derbe. Cities that are known for worshiping the elements. And this is what he says to them in chapter 4, verse 8. Formerly, when you did not know God, you were enslaved to those by nature are not gods. But now you have come to know God, or rather to be known by God. How can you turn your back again to the weak and worthless elementary principles of the world, whose slaves you want to be once more? You observe days and months and seasons and years. You see, these people had been spending all their efforts worshiping elements they had no control over. Let's pray to Mother Earth. Bam, earthquake. Did you have control over that? No. Paul, in his frustration, and this is one of Paul's earlier letters where he's very, very brash, says, you're returning to your idols, and because you're doing this, I wasted my time. So let's pause for a moment on the story. And let's go, oh, well, of course we can't change the tectonic plates and how the earth works. That's impossible. That's foolish. Okay, you're right. Absolutely. I can't think that the earth will change because I want it to. But here's a response for you. How is you throwing on an Italian or English jersey going to affect the outcome of the Euro today? I'm a Canucks fan, right? I put on my jersey all the time. Doesn't help. Jesus responds to idolatry in such a way, in such a splendid way. And this was actually an idol people loved to hold on to and actually had control over. Mark 12 says this. This is Jesus speaking. He says, he sent them to him, some of the Pharisees and some of the Hedonians, to trap him in his talk. And they came to him and said, Teacher, we know that you are true and do not care about anyone's opinion, for you are not swayed by appearances, but truly teach the way of God. Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Should we pay them or should we not? But knowing their hypocrisy, he said to them, Why put me to the test? Bring me a denarius, which is a day's wage, and let me look at it. And they brought one. And he said to them, Whose likeness and inscription is on this? And they said, Caesar's. And then Jesus said to them, Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. And they marveled at him. Later on in Jesus' life, he's brought before the Roman officials. Pilate stands in front of Jesus and finds no fault in him. Because the error of this story is not what Jesus has said. The error of the story is where the hearts of the listeners are at. The Jewish population wants to get rid of the Romans. Why? So they could govern themselves and stop paying taxes to a foreign nation. They wanted to rule. That is why they were looking for a Messiah who would pick up the sword and kick the Romans out. That is one of the reasons why they crucified Jesus, because he didn't live up to the idolatry that they had on what a Messiah was supposed to be. Today, we are no different. We want control of our lives. We push forward agendas that remove any form of conviction on us. We have a society that lives out the motto, if it feels good, do it. And in the end, humanity's biggest idol is humanity. We are our own worst gods. So, let me redo that story of the day for you. But this time, instead of focusing on an idol, you give control over to God, and he leads your day. I promise it's not as long. You wake up in the morning, you didn't have the most refreshing sleep because, hey, you've had a hard week. But as you wake up, you are thankful that you have another day to interact with the people around you. You get up, make breakfast, check the news. Something awful has happened. So you spend a few moments in prayer before you rush out the door. You get to work, ask your coworkers how their night was, and move along to start doing your tasks for the day. You are thankful that you have a job so you can continue to live in the place that you do. Sure, you wish you could make a little bit more money, but you're satisfied with what you have. Lunch comes around and you spend the time in interacting with those around you. You hear their hearts and the things that they're struggling with, and you pray with them in your heart. Afternoon drags by and you have to wrestle yourself not to fall asleep because, hey, it's afternoon and who doesn't love afternoon naps? The day ends and you head home. You spend some time preparing supper, which ends up being chaos, but you're thankful that you can enjoy some good food, even if it is McDonald's. You sit down and enjoy some entertainment before finally giving into your tiredness and heading to bed. You spend your evening routine reflecting on your day, and you're thankful for what God has given you. Much less stressful of a day. And to be honest, those are the days that I pray for, and I'm very grateful when they come. So in conclusion, all of these stories and all of these examples are meant to remind us of one thing. We are to have no carved idols, images or idols. Think of the places in your life where God has come in and worked on your heart. And I'll leave you with this passage from Psalms, because I think this passage sums up all of this. And sometimes in our lives, it's easy to see the idols, or other people around us recognize the idols and call it out on us. But sometimes we know something in our heart is wrong, and no matter how hard we try to fix it on our own, we can't. We don't see what that idol is. We don't see what that root issue is in our heart that we struggle with. So David writes it so well in Psalm 139, starting in verse 23. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there is any grievous way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. Let's pray. Father, we read through the commandments and we look at those, and some of us think they're archaic. They go, oh, this is a set of rules that just makes sense. Don't kill people, right? Don't steal from people. But you know what you were doing when you set these rules in place. They were meant to be a path for us to walk, to live the way that humanity was meant to live, a way that honors you, so we can live a life that honors you too. And it may not be easy, Father, as we have pressures from all sides pushing in on us to care and love other things other than you. My prayer this morning as we go from here, that you would open our eyes and our hearts to the places in our lives where we are not honoring you, and that we would come not out of a sense of guilt, not out of a sense of shame, but as children wanting to come back to their Father and say, I'm sorry, because we know that you welcome us back with open arms, and you will love us no matter what we do. You made that true with your son's sacrifice on the cross. And we thank you for that, Father. In your name we pray. Amen.